Hello and welcome to another episode of Film Club, and today we're going to talk about a movie that I just watched last night, and it was one that I wanted to see in the theater. I'm going to be honest, it was one of the movies of the summer that I was really looking forward to, and then all the negative reviews came out and I just never got around to seeing it, and part of it was, well, these other movies came out and they're much better, so I should just go see those and skip that one until it comes out on Blu-ray and digital release and stuff like that. And that movie is the 2017 Mummy movie starring Tom Cruise. So, I'm going to preface this by saying this movie sucks. It's really bad. And I'm a huge fan of Tom Cruise. I think we've been living in kind of a golden age of Tom Cruise as an actor. He's put out some great movies in the last decade. You know, in between Mission Impossible movies, he put out a couple science fiction movies that were really great, including Oblivion, which I really enjoyed, and then my personal favorite of them, Edge of Tomorrow, which I think is just a great movie. And, you know, there's also the first Jack Reacher, and then I heard the second Jack Reacher isn't too great, but I haven't seen it. You know, he's put in his time here. He's putting out some great movies. So I looked at The Mummy, you know, I saw the trailers, and I thought, this is cool. We're finally going to do this dark universe that they've been talking about. You know, they wanted to do it with Dracula Untold, and then that movie flopped, and decided, oh, we're not going to do that with Dracula Untold. We'll start it with this Mummy movie. So the dark universe is a cool idea. Essentially what that is they want to create the 1930s and 1940s Universal monsters and put them in their own movie, but they kind of want to do a cinematic universe, kind of like DC or Marvel is doing with their characters, but they want to do it with these original monsters, and eventually that would lead to a giant monster team-up movie. The problem with that is you have to have the first one of these movies come out and be successful and be something people like. And the problem with that is this movie sucks and it's not very good. And it's unfortunate because there's some pretty good ideas here. Idea number one that's pretty good. Hey, let's do a female mummy. That's a cool idea. I was super on board. I read that, you know, when they originally talked about making this movie. I was like, that's a cool idea. In 2017, that makes sense. We've had a male mummy for a long time, other than like Bride of the Mummy and stuff like that, and I thought this could be a cool idea. But here's the problem with creating a female mummy. If you want to create a character that's a female mummy, that's a cool idea and it's good on paper. Do something cool with that. What does this movie do? Well, they turn her into a almost sexually raged woman who literally, the entire plot of this movie is she is trying to bang Tom Cruise's character so she could bring in some demon spawn out of him. And oh boy, like, again, I'm not a social justice warrior. In fact, I hate SJWs, but come on, man. Like, in 2017, you're telling me that the only original idea somebody in Hollywood can come up with is, hey guys, let's do a female mummy, but like, what if her sole purpose is she wants to just bang Tom Cruise? Let's roll through the beginning of this movie. So, movie starts out, they set up the character, and I want to say her name is like Ahama or something like that. I'm just going to call her A because I don't want to butcher that for this entire review. So, they set up her character as she is the next in line to become the next pharaoh. Problem is, the pharaoh, her father, the current pharaoh, then has a kid that's a son. Automatically what happens is when he has a son, she is no longer in line to get the throne. That's it, it's over. She is basically worthless when it comes to that. So, what does she do? She goes and she prays to some dark lord, maybe it's Satan, I don't know. And she conjures up some spirits. She goes and murders her father, her mother, and this kid. Yes, this movie's dark enough that they show her slit the throat of a child. Now, they don't actually show the physical act, but you get the idea. And then she, you know, her whole deal with, I guess, the devil, as we'll call it, is, hey, I'm going to bang some dude, and this will insert some demon that's going to be brought into the world, and I guess maybe we'll say that's the Antichrist or something. I don't really know. And she gets, you know, they catch her after all this and they mummify her, but they mummify her and put her in Iraq. So she's like thousands of miles away from where she should be in Egypt. And that's the beginning of this movie. They set it up, fine, whatever. Like, and that's not the problem with this movie, other than, like, again, the catalyst for a female mummy is she's just trying to bang a dude, and that's stupid. Then let's enter Tom Cruise's character. Now, when they sat down and they decided to make this movie, I don't think they sat down with the idea of getting Tom Cruise to play this character. So every other character in this movie, I would venture to say, is probably in the age range of 30 to 35. Tom Cruise in real life is in his 50s. But in this movie, you're supposed to think he's probably in his 30s. And it's so painfully obvious as you watch it, it's silly. You look on the screen, you know, he had a one-night stand with this one woman who's in her 30s. His best buddy is in his 30s. He's supposed to be and this is where the movie really loses its control in the first like 10 minutes. He is supposed to be a sergeant in the Army, and they do a real shit job of explaining this. He and his buddy are in the Army, and they are like long-range reconnaissance people. But what they're really doing is they're going around all these different places in Iraq, and they're searching for treasure that they're selling on the black market. So you get a wonderful, terrible scene in which they infiltrate this very, very small outpost, and they're running in, they got guns blazing everywhere, they're shooting off their guns and everything, and his buddy calls in an airstrike to take out these people, and when the bombs drop, it opens up the chamber where this mummy is. Then you have the actual sergeant guy show up, and they have an exchange in what's probably one of the silliest and most awful exchanges I've seen in a movie, especially this year, in which this guy who's an army general or whatever he is, says to Tom Cruise's character, "Hey, I know what you're doing, and I know you're doing is wrong, but whatever, that's not how it would fly in the Army. Are you kidding me? If you caught these two guys and their sole purpose in the Army was to be looking for artifacts to sell on the black market, they're court-martialed, it's over." So that part of the movie is incredibly shitty, and it makes no sense, and it's whatever. And this all takes place in the first 10 minutes of this movie to establish these characters, and you're just already losing your mind. So after that, they jump in, they go into the cavern. This other woman shows up who he had this letter that he stole from, and then she reveals like, "Oh, you know, we had a one-night stand the other night and he stole this letter from me, blah, blah, blah," all this other stuff. So you kind of set up a pseudo-romance between the two, but there's no payoff to it because they literally have no chemistry together on screen, Tom Cruise and this other actress, not to mention their characters just don't make any sense. And then the next thing is, then that guy who already is the worst general in, you know, military history, especially on film, is just like, "Yeah, these two idiots are gonna go with you down and explore this tomb. These two guys that should be court-martialed for doing nefarious shit are gonna go into this tomb with this woman and do reconnaissance with her. Are you kidding me? Really?" And it falls apart after that. They go down there, whatever. They unearth this mummy. They bring up her sarcophagus and all that kind of stuff. Some spiders get out. It bites his buddy or whatever. Then his buddy starts doing crazy shit where it kills him, but his corpse is running around. And then it leads to one of the most ridiculous scenes in the movie where there is a plane crash and Tom Cruise goes down with the plane, but he survives because he is now cursed by this mummy who is trying to bang him. And it's just, oh man, it is so ludicrous. And here's a problem with this movie. It has wonderful special effects. They gave this movie a budget, and the special effects are really, really good. When you see this mummy as she starts transforming back into her human form, it looks really good. And you sit back and you think to yourself, wow, they gave them the money to do something. And especially in a big budget Hollywood movie lately, I've seen a lot of movies that have had bad special effects. Don't ever get me started on Independence Day Resurgence. Holy shit, that movie. Anyways, it's an example of a movie that had a budget with bad special effects. This movie has great special effects. That's the one positive I'll say about it. So all that looks good. But for a movie that is supposed to be about the mummy, not a lot of this movie actually pertains to the mummy. So then you have to interject a whole nother side story to that, and that is Russell Crowe's character who plays Dr. Jekyll. And y'all know Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, whatever, ha ha ha. He is running around and he's grabbing all these artifacts, and he's lived for presumably a long time and all this stuff. And right now he's trying to get the artifact that this mummy chick is trying to get to make this sacrifice. There are two pieces to it. There's a blade and then there's a jewel. Now, here comes another preposterous part of this movie. The jewel was actually severed from the blade and now resides with some holy knights from a different era. How the hell did these knights get a jewel that has to do with Egyptian times? Like, none of that makes sense. You sit here and go, Who wrote this? Like, who sat down, wrote this stuff? Did they ever crack open a history book? I swear to God they didn't, because none of that makes sense. You can get behind the idea of, hey man, you know what? They purposely buried this mummy in a totally different country because she did some bad shit and that's why she was killed. I get that. That's fine. But then to bring in some knights of like the Round Table Order in that kind of era and try to pass it off as believable, it just doesn't make any sense. Obviously through the events of things, you know, now he's cursed and now he's seeing all these different visions and she's trying to meet up with him, and it's just, it's preposterous. And the biggest problem with Tom Cruise in this movie is Tom Cruise plays himself. You know, like Tom Cruise plays himself everything. I think Tom Cruise is a great actor. I watch anything that Tom Cruise is in. However, in this movie, they didn't write this role for Tom Cruise. I feel like he was just thrown in because, hey, we need a big budget Hollywood actor, and Tom Cruise is like, you gonna pay me the money? Sure, whatever. And he rolled in. And he is a real piece of shit character in this movie, and it just doesn't make, like, his character doesn't make sense. It really just doesn't. So you mix everything in, then you bring in Dr. Jekyll. Now he's, you know, searching for these artifacts and stuff and whatever, and he's kind of supposed to be the catalyst that leads to this extended dark universe, which I guarantee you is not happening anymore. And they have a scene where they kind of show different jars in his laboratory of the different creatures that are going to be in upcoming Dark Universe movies that, again, probably aren't going to happen. But you got Creatures from the Black Lagoon, you got Dracula, you know, you have that kind of stuff. The Dracula thing got me excited, but then they, you know, I thought because this is supposed to be the first movie in an extended universe, they would kind of save some of the Mr. Hyde stuff. No, they don't. They totally go there in this movie, and it's just kind of silly, and it really doesn't make sense. Like, they have this whole scene where they trap, they lock these doors because Dr. Jekyll's not taking his serum, and they tell everybody, get out of this room, he's gonna go crazy, and Tom Cruise gets stuck in there, so they kind of fight. And I'm just sitting here thinking to myself, now, they're locking this door with like this like steel, you know, megaton metal, so that nobody can get in or out, but Tom Cruise could stand on his own two legs and fight him pretty much. It's just silly, like, it's just silly, and again, doesn't make sense. So we'll flash forward to the end of this movie here. We'll kind of fast forward here. And so the end of this movie, obviously, the chick that, you know, he ends up liking this chick, the chick he had a one-night stand with. And whatever, they kind of try to have a moment, and then his character being a real piece of shit, you know, she's like, well, when we were on the plane, you gave me the last parachute, and you saved me, so obviously you have feelings for me, and he's just like, I thought there was another parachute. You know, it's stupid lines like that where you're like, what? And the end of this movie has your typical fight between him and the mummy chick, and then logically the movie should have ended with him breaking the jewel on this ceremonial knife and ending it, and that's where it should have ended. But instead what he does is he stabs himself with the knife and turns into some other monster, which I can only presume is the Wolfman, but they're not doing a good job. They don't do a good job of explaining it, but that's what it looked like. So he does that, and then he fights the mummy chick until he kills her and takes her power, and then he kind of goes off and whatever, you know, he resurrects that other girl because she died, and then he's just like, you have to stay away from me, ha ha ha, whatever, and he leaves. And the end of this movie is just like Russell Crowe narrating like, well, now he's true necessary evil, and he could be used for good, but he could be used for bad. It's just, it's all utter bullshit. Like, all I wanted from this movie is for them to make a freaking good mummy movie. You know, I got one when I was in junior high. It was called The Mummy, and it starred Brendan Fraser, and it was a pretty good movie. It was a throwback to those kind of movies, and it stayed true to the characters. They also did a sequel that was pretty good too, called The Mummy Returns, and then they did a third one that really sucked, and that ended that franchise. But those first two, and again, I haven't seen them in a long time, they're pretty solid movies. And that's all I wanted this movie to be, was a dumb, fun action movie. It's none of those. It's just, it's painful to watch, and it's real disappointing. And as someone who actually wanted to see this Dark Universe thing take off, it's a shame because there's no way it's actually gonna happen now. And it's a shame, you know, I've seen some people out there say this is the worst film of Tom Cruise's career and stuff. Like, it's up there for sure. It's not worth your time. Skip it. Don't see it. 2 thumbs way down. It's bad. It's a bad, bad movie. It's not the worst movie I've seen this year. Cough, cough, a cure for wellness. But it's a really bad movie. Don't watch it. Anyways, guys, until next time.